So I guess we're ready to go. Okay, Teshadale. Good to see you all. So, as you know, one of the goals of this research training workshop is to create opportunities for you to get more involved in cognitive neuroscience if you wish to do so.
Tanda tangasu 되게 가서 심지 그 sabjonchi 척고요와 되게 아무기 수치가래 세나데 쳇술라케티 지 도행도 해봐다 진진도 도바 임바이나 이네 쳇스무트단다 tangasu 인정 왕서 천리 당도 요치기 심지그나 틀메트도 쉬야지거와 어디 당포가 수가 무기 지인스.
Now we tried to send a bunch of these EEG systems to you before the workshop, but it got caught up in customs and also COVID-related delays.
다 저게 바이나 가서 도안에 지출라단다 EEG 셀레스 론제세 유체된다 다지 같이 당에 차시 당요레스 당에 차시 당요레스 바이나다 그 잡크 니 주고로 아틴스탄발라야 잡크치나틀리 잘로 난된 치스탄발라야 그 산선 주고 누티기 강게도 치테니 셴다 아니 가서 단당아 속에 도이 나차탄 데위기 양강게도 치테지 투스 질도 테송스.
So the systems haven't arrived just yet.
단당아 속에 EEG 세그 그 레스가 론제기 유치스도 같아 단도 팔아 조요 말이스 당요 다 산선만 가대요다.
But they're on their way and they may be there early next week.
다 영화 연구를 지난해 던터 지막에 아니 고도와 질라 패션 존 거레스.
But we actually would like to have some more ongoing training in cognitive neuroscience for those of you who are interested during the winter and spring.
다 게테 쳇술라야 단당아초 인정 왕자 천리그 텔라야 지 도능 유에바당 지 되게 탁시 심지데 진유로 바인바나 가수 단다 쳇실라야 아니 단다 되게 탁시지야 저거로 아테 메트도 지가당 데네 공카테 메트도 류야게도 쳇시당 거 예스.
So Pasang will have 12 of these EEG systems, and we'll talk about how to give all of you an opportunity to learn how to work with them and also collect data on your own brain.
Tanda game pasangge lapala tanda kuyo bate chonji chikuyo resti ata kanda jopon joage bate chigos jogrestin tambalaya ane thapsi chitang de ta chetsula jela tanda EEG ti kanda spatial tangyo meta ane ti gala lapper ne shenda susu ge ya lepa nane chinga suge lepa ge chiga lab tizula taksi chia chorwa o tinado kandas chiguyo meti chiga kukachegins.
We'll likely do a training workshop once a month or so for the next few months so that you can get familiar with these techniques.
Nahada ngasuga maungbage chigta dawa khashich kirinla ya dawa rere na tele ani danda EEG ti kanda spatial tangi yume gi chiga jonda try chigorwa dawa rere na tele thama rere do try chashi tangi yeswa tige ne tene do chiche paina shesuge ani EEG ti kanda do spatial tangi yo pathela ya this kutondo yungres.
And then we can consider collaborative research projects, perhaps even projects similar to what Ken talked about in his session on lucid dreaming, dream yoga, etc.
Tanda ngasuga tanda kasugurta metutun dinda uchiche ba yambana ngasu nyamshiti gi nyamshiti na yang nyamli gi gane china degrees ro kada do china degrees na yang tanda jesulu yuchiti peshe tanda chiache ani senda do picha shabaina tana shopa ngasu genkhen lage de anjana na trison anjana tripicaps ani tang amalam tang de kapche keche shan stambala ngasu gamalanga nenjo tang ani asuka melam bangushi bigi tinda do kola ya gela simjing na achorwa o tinda do ge simjing ti tang do chu tinda do ya jimanga asuga nyamli gane dus mat china digores.
So our goal for tonight is more to provide you with an introduction to both an EEG system that we're sending you and also some other technology for recording sleep and physiology that Ken will discuss.
Tanda ngasuku choton diga kapsa ngasuku kari chigi insena ani EEG se tigung utroche tang ani shenda chi ngasuku ani kubi kapsa nye tang ani ngasuku lincoln nebab ti che jagai gi yuchi shenda atina do ko utroche chigi yes.
So James Glazer is going to first give you an introduction to the EEG system. He's actually wearing it right now. And James is my graduate student, soon to be Dr. Glazer, about a couple weeks away, a couple months away. And we're very proud of James. And he's going to give you an introduction to the EEG systems for measuring brain activity.
That anda tambutela ya again James Glazer nishetula tanda EEG chi tanda krusha yorwa tanda joyo marite o tanda tiko nguto chi resti tanda ko gola poser gola chi kondo nakpo chi kondo ti EEG system ti resta tanda James simbana ko tanda again la robbing gi ani bramba gi loptche ani tanda ko tanda loptu ta ko ta di dondakashi kana tele ko tanda da ko bramba go lopti hotter shindu yo res wa istamba tanda ko ge ani karsa EEG gi ti yuchiti kana no chi ba ti ko ngutu chi res.
Hey James, take it away.
Oh, am I first? I can do that.
Yes, look like you're the first.
I will can I share my screen? Is that possible?
Oh yes, Karmala. Nice.
Can everyone see that?
Yes, I can see that.
Great. So hello, my name is James. I'll be talking about the MUSE, which is the EEG.
Tanda sama la samdishis ngi mi la James segi is tanda ngutrochi ati tanda ani yati tanda ngasa lesga lonje gi gi tuchi chiwarwa tigi min la ya MUSE segres ti kolondes jagins.
So for the MUSE, all you need is the MUSE, which is on my head, and a phone.
Tanda MUSE the EEG di page tanga la ya chetsula kari gugu yore sena chigti MUSE sa de la ya chidwa kila koya chitwa ngula koya chitwa de tanda again James go konsha dowa de chen de tane ko nyamta ane khapar chiona de kores.
Before I get started, I want to do some review on EEG.
Tanda de kola ngutro machung la ya ngasu electric lonje tan do yo pi kola ya ne ngasu cherjon chi chi ge yes.
So in the past, we needed a lot of equipment and wires.
Ta ngoma imbana ngasu ge electric lonje de peche tan bi kapsi imbana kola kasugre ta chi yu chen do pia mangpu gua kanskla ya ko lokko yang hacha mangpu yores.
Please also correct my translations on the slides if they are incorrect. I did my best.
That's look good. Thank you.
But now with the MUSE, all we need is a head and a phone.
Tanda the MUSE the page tang we kapsang asula guya ka res tambala yang gula ko chi tang khapar chi na de kores.
So from Robin's presentation a few days ago, he described the spatial and temporal resolution of neuroscience.
Ta kesa nima khashing la ya again Robin lagi anil hopti chi bi kapsa chesula wansa sen kana la ya ngasu chonje ge secha sech ta ani dinje ge secha sech gorwa otten cha kolong goto chi ores.
EEG has low spatial resolution, which means we don't know where the signals are coming from.
Tanda ngasu la ya lesig lonje de kapsi imbana kola chonje ge secha ti yaguyo maris tin tambala ya ngasu lesig lonje ge yuchi de peche tang ba imbana lepig na ne da chiong bata da tin chiong bata thongu yor de imbana lepig sacha koala yung du setting ngasu ha kut kamaris.
but it has high temporal resolution, meaning we know exactly when the signals are coming.
That is tabla tanda ga let's go logic de la ko gi tunje ge seche te ha chang yabu yo res ta tunje ge seche te ha chang yabu yo san de ge gari chong go res na ane chi le pig nang ne da chi yong bai bai na lo da chi fa bai na lo da te kadu le ge du se ge chu chi go ro ti ha chang ge se wa ku res.
But we know they're coming from the brain.
I hope so.
And we suspect the cerebral cortex even too.
So as an example, I'd like to describe something called the wave. If the translation is incorrect, please correct me, Dawa.
Sure. The tabang asuga love said the jagi over here the Tibetan translation usually implies to the wave for water wave. So
yes,
yeah,
that is correct.
Okay, that's great.
So here is a single neuron in the brain. We cannot measure that. As an example, these are single neurons in the brain, these people. We cannot measure them. Here is a lot of neurons in the brain. We can measure them. So that's an overview of what EEG measures. So now I'm going to talk about the kinds of things the MUSE can measure. It can measure muscle movements. It can measure states of wakefulness or mental states while you're awake. And it can measure states of sleep. So stages of sleep that Ken discussed a few days ago or today. So I'm going to start with states of wakefulness. This is a picture of EEG activity from my brain. There are two sensors on the MUSE in the front that fall on my forehead. There are also two sensors on the sides that fall right above my ears. So from these four locations, we can measure the brain activity and the muscle movements from my forehead and my ears. So I would like to play a video of recording my brain activity from the MUSE.
That and the MUSE page on the Lepinangi, Cheli Kandaduchi Chigu, Tikolaya, and Yen Tonton Chizusha, Yos, yes.
Please let me know if the video doesn't work.
Sure.
So these are EEG from my brain while awake.
That and the Dicare system, Balaya, Sally Depi Capsi, EEG, Lepinangi, Sheliti, Aneko, per Kandasungu, Patiri, Tangioris, Nige.
And next, I'm going to show the kinds of muscle movements that can be measured with the MUSE.
Tanda so lepigi shelichi roa tanda digi jelaya ani tanda MUSE page tanda tanga so shane gucho chigorwa ti kanda jet kilometer konde sijagiens.
First, I'm going to show you blinks.
Ta tambotela yang so mutya chigorwa ti konde tetens.
When I blink, there is a strong waveform, as seen in the waves.
Tanda de kasro mixum jas tambalaya tanda lab ki duetignalaya ko lab ki karsogureta ko darpante hachan thumbu chuga lab chingongodwa.
Next, I'm going to show jaw clenches. When I clench my jaw, it picks up. Oh, this is eye movement. I'm showing eye movement.
Tanda degi jelaya meeting gucho tawate tangi yes.
Next, I'll show jaw clenches. When I clench my jaw, the signal gets distorted.
Hada tege jelaya ngaso geti karsogureta di khatirwa de dechwa te tangi yes ti ten tambalaya ane karsogurea. Dinachwa te tangi dis tambalaya ngaso ge delaya dayong bate ko tge karsogureta distorted tambalaya tundu ando chinchongres.
Next, I'll show brow movements, moving my brow.
Ta tege jelaya ngaso thopa ge di sugurwata mixu chigora zuma ge chamte tingucho tangi yes.
As you can see, the device is very sensitive.
That under the Kasich Sukari Hakuresana and a Yuchi or Yuchi Hachang Sura Hachang Nombu in Badi Chitsuta Haku Grace.
And lastly, I'm showing head movement.
That Hamatela young Guguchotan with the Tongians.
Where you can see in the signal picking up left and right head movement.
That under the Kasich that Ignately Chungute, Yenta Yelan Gubi, that Juguyo Pati Tongodos.
So now I'm going to go through a few of those movements and show you what the waveforms you saw look like.
James,
yes.
Can I just say 2 points?
Yes.
One is I just want to make sure that everyone knows that MUSE is just the name of the company that makes the EEG system. It's not a type of EEG. It's just the brand.
And go MUSE go koyati MUSE to MUSE te karlana ko chong ta ko te zuni go zota te chonta ro chonta instambal chonta re ma tope ta ko chongkan chenbu chigoro wata zuni te ta res ta MUSE go ma tope MUSE te ya EEG ge ko iwa chigdina do mares ko MUSE te chongkan te ge minti ta ko ta sa ju chiri dos.
Shall make 3 points. Second point is, James, you're doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
The third point is the reason why the EEG system picks up movement is because muscle movement generates electrical potentials that the EEG system picks up. So it's actually picking up the neuronal signaling, but from the muscles as opposed to the brain.
tanda de kapse nga suge EEG gi ko de ge yuchi de ge nga sung gucho tambe kapse ko gucho te ko chorgo do wa ro gucho te tamba de ge da te ko jit ko wa ten jit pi jinsen so de ka reses tamba la shir ge na nga so te shane te ro shadam te gucho tambe kapse kari chungo reses tamba la nga suge ta chi lok ni se te chungo yo res lok ni se te chungo yo tamba la ya 아니 nga lepi nang ge chi logda te malang ba chi tanda de kapse ro di gi tanda din de she ja ba di kapse ani ko karsa di gucho chi ro da dong ba ge ta chi mi tang te gucho te ku jit ku wa ten jit ku gu jin sen te res.
And the most important point is that muscle movement is much larger than brain signals. So in most of my videos, I am very still.
Ta tanda de kapse ro chi chung ye gwa de ka res na tanda kasugura ta nga suge shane gi guchu chi gorwa shane gi guchu gi la chongwi gi date ta nga su chitang gi imbaina chi lepi gi lepa nang ne chongwi gi dale tis shu chwa do yo res ro tis tambale tanda chi chu thongwa te tu thong res ane tanda de ge nyen khashi chi ga tv kapse ro alone khashi chi tv kapse ane ngara imbaina chi chitang gi imbaina chi guchu ma ta chu de yes.
So now we're going to look at the EEG for each facial movement, starting with blink.
that tanda nga su karita gi sena ro di kapsa ani chi nga su di chi ro da chi ku ngushu mando tang ro ngushu mando tang gi kapsa ani let's ga lokpar ti kana do chi ti kana do chi ngong du se te la ta ins. Tanda de mixin je ka se do tang po de.
That was me blinking.
Tang po de mixin je ka se je.
Next, I will show eye movement. This is also used to detect REM sleep or detect when we are dreaming.
Tanda nga su kar tengela ne mikin gucho te tengis ta mikin gucho tengi inya ge shi tanda chi tan chi gorwa deta kagi tanda resena chitang nga su ti wa mungu nirmu ge anyi sa chi wa te ta yana nga su ti sa chi wa chi ga amalam ta ge chi ni chi wa ta ni thupu kha chi wa otte ge ni ti ge ani chi takshi chi ta zu chi pares dinja.
As I move my eyes, these two sensors pick up that muscle movement.
Ta tanda de kapsur wa mi ti phatso ngusho tong pick up so ne tanda de la ya ko chorchi ni ge ani mi ki chi mi ngusho tong wa te la tene de ta te ge shane ge ngusho ti ani ko ge chorchi jit ku yores.
Strong muscle movements like jaw clenches can distort the signal, as shown here.
Ta pesha shana chi shane ge ngusho tembur wa ta pesha shana nga chi sindus de randa udina do che ba imbaina ani ko chu che ta che de tanda de ge ko ge da chi or wa ta da te chi chokcho zu res.
And brow movements move the device. This is the device here.
Tanda lagba na yo pate ani ko yuchi te takaran jares ro ani tanda nga su making thopa tindu sta ka make zma se ko ra to thopa du bai bai na kare chi do de kro yuchi khurang gucho tang do wa.
And moving the device will distort the signal as well.
Ta tanda ka su re ta ku yuchi ting gucho tang bai bai na ro yuchi khurang gucho tang bai bai na nga su la ya da kare chi ba te da te khurang ta chi chok chok zu res.
Finally, moving the device with your fingers distorts the signal the most. So try not to touch it.
Ta tanda derwa tanda yuche te ga la ya chi zmu gi chang de ta kong chu tang bai bai na ai nga sula yong pi ga da te pe ta chok chok yu zu re stin tam ba la ya ne chi yuche te ga la ya lakpa gi ma chang wa la ya thap chi nang go res.
And finally, we can also measure head movement in several directions.
That Tamadela Google Gushote Koge Senjit Kumsen Google Gushote ko Pasagore Cho Kashichila Duguyo Page Gushote Senjit Grace.
Next, I will talk about states of wakefulness. So this is brain activity, not muscle movement.
That other day capsule also nearly sepig and never pig color against the decoration lepagi kurungi chegu drugio pacheli drugio patig and never matope and shanegi guchugi never the mares.
If you remember from Robin's presentation, one wave we can measure is called alpha power.
Ta kete chechu again Robin la gilhop trig gani loptrio tani tremba sugo paina tadanga sugo lorg gani kuge tamse chigla yang asukari segres na alpha to segres.
Alpha power increases when we are sleepy, distracted, or have our eyes closed.
Tatanda alpha to sedi katu yara pegres na China asukar sugureta ani kunyi tuwa dawutan China mi tsimba dawutan roa odena dawu kapsa alpha to sendi pegres.
Here is an example of alpha power. Here is my eyes open with no alpha.
Tatanda de kapsa karesena ngaso alpha to seti pisun shagin di kapsa imbana Mindus Dandayo, Michideo, Michebe Capsa, the Capsa, Tandagata, Loritiganana, Apagotosio Maris.
Next, I will show my eyes closed with large alpha activity.
That Tigi Jela meets in the Bachitangi, the Capsimbana Fatosete, Shuchambongris.
As you can see, the waves are clearly different between eyes open and eyes closed.
That another Stabaimbana, she labgi, Kurunga Cheshula Tabaimbana, meets and Bata, Michu and Shag Labgi, Shag Paru, Chapatita, Pay Hatching Chambuyoris, Tongoduastus.
And when I close my eyes, the alpha activity increases.
That Midus Sambaimbana, the Capsa, Alpha Takugi activities, Cheguti, Mount Pegris.
Now I will show a video of eyes open, eyes closed, so you can see how quickly alpha appears.
That under the Capsa, Yanchitangi, Yendi Capsimbana, meets some bata, meet Chibig, Nika, Chigorwa Tigi, and Yanchitangi, stand the Capsa to get Apagi, to say Cheguchi or Wati, Jolo, Kuran joined to your party, and the Tont Grace.
First, I will do eyes open. Now I close my eyes, and you can see the alpha on the top.
Tatanda Tigela me, somebody by night, and that you're Alpha Gito City, near Gantila, Gongo, Patonkaduas.
I open my eyes here.
Me Chibarwa.
And now I close my eyes here.
Tatanda the day Yanchi Mitsangis.
And there's the alpha.
That digger na Alpha to Setires.
James, can you pause it for a second?
Yes.
I was going to point out that if you were to draw a box that's about a second long, then you would count how many peaks there are. And there are usually about 10 peaks for alpha because it's often 10 cycles per second. So that's how we can tell the frequency, 10 per second, and say that must be alpha.
Yes.
Tatanda de la Genkan like and a canon jadi carres and a getting us to Kercha Chiki to search your Ratandi to search to do your Kercha Chiti induce Jeba in Bina, Negala ya the Trish chizo son trishin dar mo chizo son te karcha chikatiyun chi karcha chikatiyun tigna la nga suga alap katsu chindu duz le ko ro ja ba imba na chuyo res ro chu ti karla na nga suge apa to se ti ge korang galab ki ani duchoti chures
10 spikes per second.
ti karla na ko kasugra karcha ri na la ya ani ko tanda ge ko tati alap ge state tham katsu chi la gudu se tres.
And next, I will show another state of wakefulness.
Tanda dege jela ya karise na nga zo ni sebi gi kaps rwada wakefulness dege enko namba shinda chi ande shijagiyens.
This is called beta power.
Dega rela na beta topse sigres.
This is usually, this is twice as fast as alpha power. So about 20 per second, 20 peaks per second.
Ta dega resena beta topse sayade chitange bana alpha topse gi ani da mis ki ma yo resta ti kapse bana tige karse go resena ani alpha topse tigna ne ko karchach kana tele tanda ge ta lab tige sete choose ngoy ngorwa tanda beta topse ga setna do nishiz ngongres.
Beta is largest when you are focused, doing thinking hard, and very awake.
Ta tanda di beta topse sayade cutting ngongres istambala e chorang beti kurota luchi chikte dramba ta ani tondong ze doguna ko shoes abza chile drbarwa o tinda do kapse bana ani beta topse ngongres.
To show you beta today, I drank a lot of coffee.
Ta tanda beta topse ti chetsula tayag chet ngarang na coffee pe ma boton yestire. Hai.
As you can see from the wave on the bottom, there are more peaks per second, very fast waves in beta.
Tanda chese hodela du stava in bainaro ko ga labge kasugure da kachare regna tele labge se ngoya chigoro te hacha mambuche and ko la ya ko ngoya te pen jopo yores.
And finally, I will show you a video of the beta activity in real time.
Ta thamat dig jela ya kartange sena ne beta ge cheli chigoro ta ko ge cheguti ani ta chigo ngis tarwa ngis kanada uchi chungu yemete atens.
If you look on the top, you'll see very quick activity, lots of ups and downs per second.
Ta gantela ta bain baina ro ko ge cheli te hachon jopo yo parwa ta ya man duya ge lab ke ho chigoro ta te tang shabti peche hachon jopo yo pa de tont kres.
And this is an example of a wakefulness, alert state compared to alpha, which is a more drowsy, not alert state.
Tanda beta ge korang ge nebapti kare songo reses tambala nili sepi metse ne hachang ge trombo yo barwa oti ge nebapti songo resta da ngoela nga so alpha ge nebapti ke chang tambala alpha de kare do desma ni tue chi nyo ngo chinwa oti ge nebapti songo res.
So, as a review, the MUSE can measure facial movements, brain activity, but what else can it measure?
Ta tanda cherjon chi cheba imbana ro tanda nga su MUSE digerwa ani dongpa ge gushuti ko senjet kres ani alepa ge cheguti senjet kres ne shenda kari senjet kres.
I might need your help on some of the translations if they're incorrect on the slide, Dawa.
Sure.
So it can measure brain activity, which we already talked about.
Lepa ge cheguti senjet kres ti tanda nga su jo bas.
It can measure heart rate.
Ta tada de nga su ga nyingi dingse wa nyingi dingse ti senjet kres.
It can measure breath.
tanda nga so ge ukilaya chigoro unjung te senjet kres.
And movement in several ways.
Ane ko ngusho yoro ngusho te chi ko chokashi chila yoro namba mandawa ge chokashi chi ngusho te ane senjet kres.
It has an accelerometer and a gyroscope, meaning it can do side to side, up and down, left and right.
Tata de kapsa kurang la ya yue to accelerometer system bala nga su nyenon je chite che gyroscope system bala ya parts kura ja te senjer do tanda de bana ko kar do cho chini cho jenda la do ya che ne dni jala do ya che ne parts do ya che ro wa du ku senjet ku res.
And as already talked about, which we will talk about soon, it can also measure sleep in many ways.
Tanda ngena choose jayore choose chinda jayore standard dege MUSE dege shenda nga so nye lokpi ge ne ba jigaro wa tiang senjet kres.
Finally, it can measure some level of blood oxidation or blood flow on your forehead.
Ta shenda kari senjet kres system bala nga so chak nang la oxidation system bala chak nang la solong yo me che chigaro wa ta te shenda shepana nga so thupar wa ta peko gang la ya ane chak ge jowa te ka so chiro do tiang senjet kres.
Also known as PPG.
Te jela ya PPG sigres.
And here is a full list for reference later, if you want the slides.
Kete jela chechu tanda gela pecho tanga ge deso google yo paina ane de na kare kare chi senjet kre se de kuge chaya cha chang chi de la yan de se jayes.
So what can the MUSE be, what can this be used for? As an example, I'd like to show meditation.
Tanda MUSE de yuchi churwa de kare ge chet pecho tang kre senarwa de ge peson chi tangpote ane di pecho de se jagins gom se nga su gondrup chi yorwa ti kol pe ti chet pecho tang de kores.
As an example, all you need is a MUSE and a phone, and you can see the same waves, the same data that I showed you today.
Ta di kapsi chetso gonjak kapsi chetso yuchi kari gugure sena MUSE di gugure di tanyamte ne archi gugure sena khapar chi gugure swa tan den sha yopa imbaina ane den sha la tene de tanda ane ten sha ju ge ji tang thu chi gorwa lab chi gorwa tinda do chetso ge chi pa chi chen thongres.
So as an example, if we have 3 individuals meditating in different ways who want to examine differences between meditation practices.
Ta misim chi chin de tan wa ko gom jab kapsa gom te mandawa jab gom jai ge ko mugya te yang mandawa che ko shimjik ki su te yang ko karsugura ta gom mandawa japa na chepa kare chundu sa tinda do chi ge ni thoi bai na.
Each person is doing a different practice.
Ta me di kapsa ba na me re ge karsugura ta ko gom gi jia chigoro ta gom ya chigoro ta mandawa manda gom go res.
Once they are done, they can look at their brain activity during the practice.
Ta ko so gom je chanu ge jela ya ane tanda dege ko gelepi gi cheguro kanda do chi du sa de ane ko standard kores.
They can also look at their heart rate, their breath, and these other ways of measurement.
Ane tanda gelepi gi dit sa mai barwa nga so aning gi din se ka so chiresha ni unjum ka so chiresha te chu ge yang ko ge tang thu te tala yang standard kores.
So this is one example of using the MUSE to find different different EEG activity for different practices.
Ta tanda de ka research tambala nga so EEG pecho tanga de te ro ane chi gom drug mando chibi kapsa ani lepigi tanda letsega logor tirwa mando kandanda uchin du se telaya peche tangagi pitsun chires.
So finally, I will talk about states of sleep, and this device was actually designed to measure sleep.
Tadanda thamatelaya ngaso anyugi nibatilaya desijagins tak munishe baimbana gulakonde gi ane yuchinde bana chirge anyeti takpi gi chetu ane chetu zusha jugi yuchichires.
So here is a picture from Ken's slides showing the stages of sleep, which can be identified using this device.
Tadanda dege de tensa jitu karen again Ken lagi ane taptena shajugi ane nan such tomba instant de kapsim bana niki rumba mando dus tensa yores tan data karesena yuchi ko gula konde chu deep chu tang de tang ane ko chenje thpatina res.
So for perspective, in the past we needed a lot of equipment to measure sleep. Yeah.
Do some tambai mana ngomai bana yela taxe chi kapse bana yela taxe chi kapsu kola ya yuchi ta hacha mampochi gu yores.
Now we can use the MUSE to measure a lot of the same sleep, a lot of the same areas of sleep.
Tatanda bana ro nga su yuchi kan chi pe chu tang de tang ane nyi tang de yo pi ta chenje mampochi do chenje yores.
And there are studies comparing these two different methods.
Tata korangi chi tapsimando ni do ngomati tang tata ge tapsimando ni do den cha ga paro ge ani chi chapter te dregi yang ko simji taxe simji tina wres.
So on the top you see the sleep stages tracking as you go from awake on the top down into deep sleep and REM, which is dream states on the bottom here, I believe.
Ta gangi te Tikar Sangoresana Natsu Nigiran che Tampo Sebane, Teneman Kore, and Natsu Mungani Mugani Chigorati, and Natsu Amalam Mayagi, Nigini Baptila Dugu Padusta, Koge, and Nikaran Batangi, Resagangi Tridige.
And here we see the high equipment in the past, showing a frequency graph with the frequencies over here.
Tatanda de ngomanga superchu tanga ge yuchiti la tene de yuchiti la tene de tang ne chenje chu gerwa ani ko le pa ge lab chi gerwa lab ti dus ten yo resta de ka simbana nga so de lab ki ta de chute dus tan sha do de chute tsujo lo pa yin sho to la ko ani jont gan la rwa ani trisha yo res.
As we can see, the 10 and 20 hertz we already know, which are alpha and beta.
Tatanda de kapsanga chu kari ha ko du sana de ko hertz wa de che chiton nishigu paroti nga chu de thong do was ta de kare resana de tananga chu ngola de sejaba chiton nishite kare re ani alpha to chetang beta to che sa chigo aten chares.
There is alpha first because they're tired.
Ta tambo de la ya ani alpha dus karlana ko kalika nyobe chorwa.
And there is no beta because they are asleep.
Ta de la ya chon beta ge top seti chon medwa karchila bana ni tambala beta yo marwa.
Now let's look at the MUSE, the same chart from this device.
Ta tanda nga chu kalana ganta data ta ko ri chipa so ko kon chipa injuge ani tanda MUSE daily chonwi ge ani nga chu ge de chogi de la tagins.
It looks very similar. As we can see, in each of the stages of sleep, it tracks very well compared to the high equipment or the expensive equipment, I should say.
Tanda de kapsa nga su dus taba imba na ro ni ke ramba re kaps ku tsenjewa dus ta halam daudo rishaswa istanbulaya tanda MUSE said the kutab duchi konla kyu sarwa ani shenda tanda gangla yuchu go ngoma ge yuchiti imbana ko nyokta saw mampule pa kansila konla chembu sarwa ta kuran shag tsenjete halam daudo dus.
Studies vary in their results, anywhere from 75 to 95% similar.
Ta ko takshe bana ko takshe jete chumanda manda yore simbana kuran ge takshe ni charwa ta yuchiti mando ngoma yuchita tanda yuchiti cha pecho tangde tang ko takshe ge dusje bana ko 지금 총위기 차대로와 총위기 차대 자책 dunch동안의 구축공가 된다 고 총구요레스.
As a summary, we can get very, very good sleep data from the MUSE.
다든 딜라야 간다 다든 가르레스나 MUSE 되게 유치의 배치 당바이나 유치의 배치 당바이나 가서 아니 땅 레웨게 당토데 네 페야 부든라 그레스.
We can also use the other measurements to get other sleep data, such as movement, position, and intensity.
Intensity mean
just movement is fine. Movement and position. Yeah.
Okay. Tanda roa shenda yang asu nyetang dewe nyetang dewa yu chu yang ko tsenje shenda tinda yorwa shenda kari tsenje yoresana ne chiga guchu yoro movement guchu tang ane position system balaya ngasu ge chiga tangka se gro ata tangtab sna tangka sna chin duktang chigorwa o te tsenje yores.
We can also identify dream times of dreams and help lucid dreaming that way as well as an application.
Shenda kare peshe shenda kare la pen thokre sena ngaso ge chiga malam tang ya ge chito katsu sa malam tang do sti shia tang ane chiga ngaso tang we malam sagura malam malam ba ngushi ga malam ti chiga megi chitha tizula ya ya pen thokyo res.
She is dreaming of a brain.
Tanda de la nye de nye pumu de kari ge malam tang go res na lepa kula malam tang ge res.
Finally, at the end, I want to say a word on what the MUSE cannot measure.
Ta de la ya kari chi shekin se na ane MUSE se ti ge tsenje mthya kari yore se ti kolan de shagins.
It cannot measure thoughts or read your mind.
Ane nga su ge samshi yorwa samshi korte ko ge tsenje tkamares cho samlu kari tang ge me chorwa ta o te ko tsenje tkamares.
It cannot directly measure emotions. It can't tell you if you're happy or sad.
Ta nga su ge samnyong ji yorwa samnyong te yang ko ge shaja tsenje tkamares cho ga yu chu yu de shaja tkamares.
And finally, it cannot transmit thoughts.
Nga su ge thama de la kar se na de la ten de nga su ge chi samlu te phajola ya puya chi yorwa mi chi ge samlu mi jenda puya chi yorwa te yang tkamares.
Although it sounds like Ken is working on it.
Yena ya gen ken la ge de ko la ya ko to se de ku yos ro dus.
So thank you very much. And everything you saw here today, you can do very easily with the MUSE.
Ane chama la tuji chi es ro tanda tiran che su ge dus thongya te chama ane tanda MUSE se de ge ane ko yu che te pe che tang de tang che chu chama ge yang ko lil how drip ka tin da res.
And I did leave about 10 minutes for questions, if there are any, or Ken can talk about the aura as well.
Ta yang tanda de ko la ya ke te che chu draw yo pa na kama just dus ke te draw yo pa na yang te na yang ge ken la ge yang ko khapsa tin da na yo na na de ko res.
Thank you.
Oh tuji che. Ta draw dang sho.
Go there.
Go do.
니트로드 가든스 나타나 디 니치 값 아니 딱셰지 요치 마무리도 저기 아니 다 말람티 강자들라 다 니쿠이 강자들라니 말람 당게 버데 하고 요리야 말레스 타케르라 거다 말람 하고 데고 타카 하모가지 아니 고 로리 디네지 드og두시니 지니다 아니 탕토 더럽지니 모파치 조레베 아니 고 미신데 타카 하고 요레스 니트로디
That's all. When I use MUSE to investigate someone is dreaming or not, do you directly know the person, the subject is dreaming, or do you use the EEG signals, the wave, to determine someone is dreaming?
You use the EEG signals and the movement of the eyes.
Sure. Tadanga su de la ya let's go logic or what tamatela love chicken gudwa kuge o teta anitim se ani making gushochigorwa o tetola tenideta ne miti ge ani mlan tangdu mundu se chigoro te thajegir la to sajashing mares.
Can I say one thing on that? And Ken, maybe you want to. James made a really good point, which is that the MUSE could tell you arguably when a person is dreaming based on their eye movements because they would be in the REM sleep, but it's not telling you what they're dreaming. So it's important for everyone to realize that it's not reading the mind. It's just making inferences that the eyes are moving, and that means that the person's likely in a particular state of sleep, but it's not telling us what the actual dream content is.
James get ya wosong song na ko making gucho tanga wasagora ta making gucho tanga tela tele ta ko melan tanga yo basagora ta tanda tin stambala ya ani dig melam tanga du se ati kare dese jagor system bala nga su ta niki neba ro nga su mungun nyimu ge neba tele le stambala ya ani ko ge ta tige melam tanga ge ti resha se chigoro atten dese jagor ma topi ta dig kapsukuga malam tangatu se tin desi jagar ma to pi mi tiga malam kari tangatu tin desi jagar ma res tis tambala ngasuge dela tanda ge chi yuchi chi gorwa yuchi ti peche tamba bana ngasuge mi gi semti toya chi gorwa te yo ma res.
One last go ahead. Yep.
I would say we can say with certainty if a person is in REM sleep, but we cannot say with certainty whether they're dreaming. If you wake somebody up when they're in REM sleep, they're about 80% likely to tell you they were dreaming.
Tanda de kasim bana ro nga suge mungu nirmu ge nyesegdo REM RAM search to wa nyigi nibab jiro nyigi ramba o dig kapsim bana nga su kare ha kure sena khuge ta karsagde mungu nirmu ge nyela ya desha se lesha se chiti nga su tanda ge chi tatila teni de tarwa logitila tende da hash shet kres tenten shet kres imbaina ya mitiga mala migundu se de tenten shet kamares ro ta tanda nga suge mungun yimuge ni kubi kaps michi tropa imbaina ro ne jacha jechus kirwa malam tangdu se tin de jagres.
So the brain signals of dreaming we're not exactly certain about, but also when a person wakes up and says I did not have a dream, there's two possibilities. Perhaps they didn't have a dream, or perhaps they had a dream but then forgot it, which is a very common experience. So it's hard to know which of those two it is.
Tanda de kapsimbana roachi malam tanga yo me sa chigor wati tenten ko tanda nga su I jini tata shet kyo maris ro tanda de kapsimbana chichi ba imbana ngoni ko ge malam tama song system balati kapsla kapsa malam tama song ngoni malam matong ate de sigres ro chichi ba imbana yang ko malam chi tanga yo pa imbana yang malam ti chi sem stamba kijet malam tang song system balaya na temba je chi malam tama song sa ate na ingres ko yong se ya sechati ni yores.
Zikpo parlo jaga tang kapar jat ngol khiti kala zikpo no kurs kindo tandi tanda ndi tashi tangadi mangpo jere charchi kindo jere mangpo jina zikpo no kyo mares.
That's all. For do we use the MUSE often, or do we use this like once does it like affect, does it have a like a negative effect for health and body?
The MUSE does not do anything to you. It only records what's already happening in your brain.
That the MUSE the page tang ba na de nga su zu pu ga la tele ko ge chi drip tang ten da ji ga ma re so zu de ga la na ko ni chi le pa tang ro yo pi ko ge te ta chen je ge res.
It is safe and like kind of like wearing a hat with a hat.
Ko dinja yo res ro nga su chi ti ka sa shamu combatant paris. I forgot to mention its examples. Sometimes people say that like use your mobile phones often, like close to your head or close to your eye. It has some kind of negative effect to your health. So I think his concern is like
I see.
For mobile phone we use that electromagnetic waves, right?
So
everywhere. So yeah.
It is similar to like wireless headphones.
Mm-hmm.
One other thing, sorry, Dawa, is
sure.
Some people find it uncomfortable. So some people do not like to wear it because they don't sleep well, because they're very sensitive.
Sure. Tanda de kala na nga so ge chi anjong na chi ga ta anjong na nya tin da thwa khu tin se ko pa me chi de ro sto ta te ge yu chi ge chi trip tang da wo chi pa re se shu chen yo ma re ro ko ga no tin da cha yo ma re ta da da ge lai so te shen da de ga ra se na ye kha shi chi in bai na te kon bai na du me ju tin da ro o te da tin kon de ta na ni ya ko ku mu du shon ni du mu du se ni tin da yo res.
Dawa, two things on that. One is, I think I'm correct in saying this, the MUSE is not emitting anything, it's just recording. So it's not emitting anything that would be dangerous. It's entirely safe. The second thing is that no one has to use this system if they don't want to. This is just there for people if they want to explore it or get familiar with it, but nobody's going to feel any pressure to use it if they don't wish to.
Tanda de netanis desjagins tangpoti karin senaro tanda de MUSE go coins to take ko ge data chi tirado chi ko logo yo patirado chi yo maris wa ko ge lepin on kare yiti lepi tando chi tang gudo chi tu ko ge chen je chi ko ge langer ma to le tin yo maris wa chi ti tins tambala neti yo maris wa ane nyoti karin se tambala tanda ge chi til he yu chi til he tambala ya inchi pecho tangwa tenda mares kete yan chi pecho tangya la tenda du me pambana me matana la chen yo mares.
We'll take one more question and then we'll let Ken introduce the aura.
Da tanda to tamachi langins ane tege jela ya aura se chi orete ane again kan lage ane ngoton ngres.
Ungi tewinda dini karsa iji digitnda gomdan deni ani ji taji chitur leshto dile tsambado ujungu heart brains dizin sum gosha jadwal because on heart meditation like the mind meditation kebar di khandis chitugres like easily.
One you have mentioned about the examples of different types of meditation. You have breathing, and then you have heart, and I think other one is brain. So how do you differentiate between heart and brain that you have mentioned in the different types of meditation?
Those were examples of different measurements to focus on. So you can focus on, you can look at your heart rate during meditation, you can look at your breath during meditation, and you can look at your brain activity during meditation. There are all kinds of different practices of meditation that you can look at all three. So,
okay,
yeah.
over here, for instance, when you say looking at means like someone is actually doing meditation, means concentrating on his heartbeat when doing the measurement, or?
Yeah, no, Dawa, just to clarify, what James put up was just how you could use heart, brain, and whatever the other one was,
breath, yeah.
Breath, as an outcome variable. Those weren't different types of meditation. Those were just different metrics of the, the device.
So one person is interested in their heart rate, another person is interested in their brain activity.
Yeah, but those weren't different types of meditation. They were different data points that you could get from the instrument.
Different ways to measure meditation.
Sure. That tangi ti ro di mar sakar sanga so desi ja ti chi nin ta tuka ta chi leba ta usage to wa te ya te tanda ge chi gom ra mai ba je ro tanda ge ti desi ja ya zu ti ba na chi nga so gom chi ja go re gom chi ja ba ba na chen je ma bu chi ro ta re ma re chen je ma bu yo pa ge ne te tak tangi yes picha shan san sama nga so ge gon je pe ka so ya un jong ge tanda yo pi ge ti tsejene de kore yang san sama nyingi ding tse chigorwa nyinti ding se kana do chire du se ti tseje yore ni shenda te la nga suge chi ale pe gi na ni tanda nga suge wangsa gi chi chele tan chegu tan do yo chuge ani lab ti zo tseje yorwa ti deshe ja de kare se sta balaya tseje mana yo pa ge ni tan te ani chi ko pitsun she zamins.
Okay, Ken, do you want to give an overview of the aura?
Okay, here I have one of our slides from yesterday's lecture, which hopefully you remember because you reactivated your memories during sleep last night.
Ta de nga so kesan zenda tibi kap special tan sha ji chi ins ro chesu peche tamba su go chiresta wa ani kachila ba na dang chi su ta ni khu bi kap sin ba na nga so ge ko tamba te ya chesu chi gi wa ko this ji zang ani peche te su go chires.
And we talked about the idea that polysomnography is a way to measure different aspects of the physiology to allow us to talk about the different stages of sleep.
Ta tanda de ka so ni ti chilin khana ma gsin tu sa go de ka sa ta de mandi ge ngi ni de mandi ge ni tak do chi tu shna yo ni tan do yo chu ge zu pu kham ge da ko ge ka so go ta chashi mang bu chi chen je chi go ro o de la de se go res.
Now when we do this in my laboratory, people will often wear a cap like this on their head that has many different places for electrodes.
Ta chuge ba na nga ge chu takte kan ni chu ka se ba na ta da ge lopana na temba ge shamu de do chu gola congress ta de la kare se na kola chu logni tin da chu sa ge ikuma so na mambu yo rest kan la.
And we use some wet paste and then we plug electrodes into each of these holes to have it make contact with the skin, and then we take the wire and plug that into a big machine that when I was a graduate student, the machine was the size of a big refrigerator.
Ta ngoma te ka sa zulu subtract na na subject chi bi kap sim ba na ro ta de ka de chi gre se na de gola kon shamu do te gola kon ne te ga la ya ko ane tanda yu kon re na te le lo te ta gu do lo ne te ta ne me se ne lo ne te thama te la ya ko ta go re se na ko lo ku te kan za ne ko ya ko tuchi chambu sla ta gu yo re swa ta ngoma imba na tuchi chambu ta sa te ro ta ko tuchi ama do te ji nga so ge chagam do yo ro ta chagam do chambu te na yo res.
And today the machines are smaller, and even the electrodes, if I show it here, also already does some of the amplification that the machine used to do. So some of the amplification happens right on the head, and then the wire transfers the amplified EEG. Bigger EEG signals.
Ta tanda imba na ji kar su gre ta yu chi te ko this jin chon do res tanda de kap sem ba na nga so lokpa na tembi kap sa lokni chi ten sha yo ro lokni te la ya ko lokni rang gang la ya nga so ge EEG ge kurang ga da chi go ro da ti chi che tang ya ge yu chi tin da yo re tin sta ba ku ge chi che tang ba te ni ku ge chi cha ma te la ya pha tang ge yo res.
So we kind of call this the gold standard. To have all of these measures gives us the most confidence that we are measuring the activity of the body and the brain correctly to know what sleep stage a person is. So by gold standard, I'm not sure how you translate that, but the the accepted perfection of standards.
다 단다기로와 데이터 참아로와다 거기 즈포강 다가 니키 값고 체제 만보지 체제스도가 데이터 참아 체제제네 데이터 참아 냠트로 발라텐 데이터 가서게 지가 니 값서 카나도치 지그도 네타 카나도치 레샤사테 거기 단테 디시자트고 레스타 딘스탄발라야 데이터라야 아니 가리 디시자거스나다 거기 gold standard 라나다 체토시스 고라다 거다 더시체기 지가 드라마마스나 체토시들이 신디시자거스.
But as James mentioned, it's complicated to have all those wires and the big machines. So we also use some other technology we call wearable technology that's easier to use.
다 제임스라 소나 신데 아니 실게 임바나가서 지 투치 mampuji taya nyokta sau tang tuchi chambu tindado ji mampu peju tang la nyokta sau yoresta de chera yang asu bana ta tanda chi control wearable stambala control ge ani yuchi tindado tang so peju tang yores.
And I showed you one system yesterday that was a competitor, a different company that makes a system we use in our experiments. And it's similar to the MUSE device that's shown here, I think an earlier version of the MUSE device here.
다 현대적인 시스템을 대양 가지고 단다가 연소 살아 옆에 인쇄들도 가지고 EEG 유치들도 네 그거 MUSE 당보디 MUSE 당 아니 그거 체제다 도도레스로 하다 양 단다 MUSE 대양 그거 다 태양 빠지나 그 만들어지도 이 MUSE 레스로 세족 대양 그 주다 젠다치기 주바가시라야 체제된 아주 EEG 체제 들어가는 자레스.
And these devices are good because they can measure at least three things: body motion, EEG, and heart rate. And that gives us a lot of information, even though the EEG is not as good as the EEG I get from these electrodes in my laboratory.
다 단다게 유치치고로 유치 데이터라 거기 가리기 키페요레스 스tambal에 두수 집단계 임반에 거기 용탈라야 숨스 센제트요레스 치칼라나 가속에 죽부구초체 아니 이지체 가소년 그 파당 숨차데 거기 용탈라야 체자트요레스.
So on the right we have two other devices, the Fitbit that goes on the wrist and a ring that goes on a finger, and they can be used in a similar way, though they lack EEG because they're far away from the head.
현대의 가리오레스 스tambal에 유치 만도아니 도가데라야 예쇼살라로 지티카레스는 가서 지 트마강라 럭파강라 고에 트마강라 고에 주게 대제네 현대된 가서 스코치도 안 저거 고에 주도가 덴샤가 코 현대된 체자그레스 가시가시로와 임바나 데라야 가리오 마레스나 데라 EEGT 체자요 마레스 가르치라바나 가서 럭파강 고에탄 저거 고바 임바나 데 레파타 타라인타제 아니 코 EEGT 요 마레스 되기나나.
So these devices are not always accurate. They're not agreeing with the gold standard all the time, and yet they're still useful. So we also use some of these devices, the Fitbit in particular, because even if it's imperfect, it still gives us helpful information.
다다데 되게 오케이 이쇼라요 비기 유친된 샤임바나 가츠고다 고고 세덴슈고 유시사치고 와티 라야코타 तेनांशी चित को हमार तख्ता यो हमारे स्वा को के लेंथ इता को कर सकू चेंज बाते ताता चेंज को हमारे सिंबा ना या को कि मैं बाले टाबा चुरवा दिस तंबला या तंदा दुस तसे शिंजी को कपसे या को पेचो या से तंगे ओरेस.
Here's an example. There are some patients that have a disease called insomnia. They have trouble sleeping, and there are different types of insomnia. But they will go to a doctor and get the gold standard type of sleep study to find out about their insomnia.
다단다 피사샤파나 야코 네파 카시 카리오레스 스tambalanga 추가 뉴 이어 뉴 쿠마트가게 강해지고와 어때요레스 틴 스tambal라 게테코 지금 야다 멤버 사송데다 아니 땅로요 피게 따치 그런 게 덕시지야치고로 왔다 세투시 때 덕시지 바이나.
So there are many types of insomnia. One patient might go into the clinic and the results will show that the patient has very poor sleep, agreeing with what the person experienced.
당아서 아니 예스고로 아니 쿠마트가 텔라양 고게 Ani kuma to a new year te ko mambo do what in stambala ke te michi ta ko menkana so de ta ko melaten stambala ya ne member ga le cho ni ge chi kar su ta ni te yagu khut kum du se te laba imbana ani kar se na mi te la khorang chitang ko ni yagu khut ko maro ta new year ge te chonti yor what in stambala ya shepa te khorang ni chitang yo resti kapsa.
There's another type of insomnia where the patient goes to the hospital clinic and the recordings show that their sleep looks just like normal sleep, and yet the person says, I slept not at all that night.
Kasi karo system balaya never chiga menkana chi de ko taksi chi kapsa taksi chi ba imbana tanda nga su ta chil de tokla ta ba imbana ko ni khya de jinden na jin khu yo ba mi jinden na jin khu yo ba ngongo yo re imbana never the system ba da go da nga ni choni khu ma so se de se jaga ge ne ta tin na yongres.
So they call this sleep stage misperception. And the doctor still has to treat the patient because the patient has complaints. So they don't say the patient is wrong, but they know it's not the same as other types of insomnia. The patient is sleeping, but their mind is continuing to think they're awake, and that is problematic for the patient. So they still want to help the patient.
Ko ngone dona ni khuyor da ya samlo na na ya ko ni khubi kapsula ni se yo se tend de yorwa adin stambala ya ko chitang ta ni khwa na je karsa ni jenda na je khuyor da samlo na atle ni khubi kasa ya ko seba na je ten yo so ko la ya ni ma khubi gi dushit lai ko yorwa din stambala ya ani member ga ale chu nurse asa tinda yo mare tela ya ku tin na sheng ko ge ta chi lokpat tokpa chi yorwa ta ni yer ga na je te lokpat tokpa tela ya ani tela ya ko ge ya men chi che yores.
Now, I've been wearing the Aura ring to monitor my sleep for a couple of years. And one example, last night, I am sure I woke up twice and looked at the clock and realized it was not morning and I needed to go back to sleep. But the results told me I was sleeping the whole night. So I know it's not always correct, but nevertheless, I think it's useful.
Tanda ngara samba na aura rings as the aura tanda cost to aura kumina aura to or dim by na ko lu discussion ko ba inswa and then dangwa ba na samlana try at the person thama ni sa ni sel dus chisola ta go ten case on swa and to stop by ins imba na dus taku tanda gi aura gi chiko tigi tom big tantula ta ba na Nili choni semi dus ni bet ko kukupa desha se ga tantu teng duswa tada netan de ka simbana ko ge chi tantu te tata chita teg mduda imbana ya ko ge chi peshe tangi yes yang ko pentsa dus.
Now the measures that the ring obtains are similar to what James talked about. It measures your movement with an accelerometer and gyroscope and temperature and heart rate.
Tadala digi tsuko digi kari chenjegre senarwa ane kuganana yuchi mampu yezarwa koge ane zupu ge ching guche ta ane zupu ge treche ta ane nyingi dingche tuzu kugu chenjegre.
Now the heart rate is a very good signal because it's measuring the blood flow in the finger, and that's perhaps even, they suggest, better than the wrist. So it can have a good measure of heart rate and also use that for some other metrics that they get by analyzing the heart rate. For example, it can tell you the breathing rate indirectly from the heart rate.
Tada de kasarwa tsuko de la ya chikari ores stambala ya ko dege aningi dingseti pechetangoro aningi dingseti ko ge chenje stambala te ngasu kala na chok korcho la tende de ko cheje gora de stambala ya chi ya shishina lakpa ga thuma ga ko ya tele ya tsuko ga ko ya de ge ya aningi dingseti ya go chenje te na yongris kachila pa na ngasu tan zigi na la ya ko thate jugu yorwa tayanko de la tende de tayanko ga ningi dingseti chenje go yore ningi dingseti cheje batila tende de tandan dege ningi dingsetan lo yo pige chi tangtu chi yorwa ya ti peche tang de ta ya shenda tende da wala ya ngasu ge chi ya kuto sa tende yore picha shapana ningi dingset dege tangtu ti peche tang de ta ya ngasu kari kola ya ko ge karsukurata ringde tanga yore sena anyingi dangsen de tang tene de tanga suge ti karsa uki jungu ge chechigoro u le ge chechigoro ote yang phala ringde tanga tena yongres.
So the system in here plus the application on a phone uses what's called machine learning to take all the information it collects and make an inference, a guess about what sleep stage you're in during the night.
Tadada de kase bana ro tsiko de tang ani khapar te ni shag pecho tang de terwa ani khug ta kare chi chenje ge yopa chama chenje ani de la ten de tang ta khug se kar se ge na su machine learning se ge ta chichi gi shi jong se ge ta de ta ke khug ta chaten de chama chi chama pecho tang de tang ta khug kare se ge se stam balaya ani chopa chi chi ge chopa kare chi ge se na ani gi ne ba playa phala ya chopa chi chi yong res.
So here I'm showing some numbers from my own sleep for about 2 weeks. And every night I can say how many hours the ring monitored that I was asleep, how many minutes in REM, in deep sleep, and light sleep. And so these are all the numbers one can extract from this system.
Tadada tsikoti kola temba teni de terwa ane ko tantu kashila yes tarwa de kasa jentran nigren la lanjirwa nani diga kasa na ko ani chondo ani chito katso chikosha tane mungu nyumu ganye te kama katso chiresha ani thupute kama katso chingorsa se diga tantu te tanda tsikoti la teni de chongres.
Hey, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, go right ahead.
There's a lot of variability in your deep sleep. Ranges 13 to 60 minutes. Is that normal or is that?
For someone of my age, yes.
Okay.
So some nights I have a good night of sleep. Here's an example. Sleep latency, that's how many minutes from when I laid down until I fell asleep. A good sleep latency is 5 or 10 minutes. I have a good sleep latency, although some nights it took me 30 minutes because I was thinking about some interesting thoughts.
Tadada ngala trata de gelage karsana chiga ni thupugi dela taba imbana ro kama chusula du tuchula duswa dela ya chapter masuna heba chembu dusta tinda chetang reses tambala ya ne gelaglu so dela do chimbana and chetan dela do yongres ro ne tanda dela ya shenda chitaba na latency sade dere nye nugu jela ya ni makula ya tis ngorgo do ta se goro ni stambala ya chan sama nye chi kama khashi jela ni khulu goro an chan sama ya ko tondo chikar sugata yan sambu ta tinda do gola ya samlu khor stambala ya kama sumchung go ya tinda do yongo res.
The sensors measure my heart rate very accurately, and here I see the column for the heart rate numbers for 2 weeks, and next to that heart rate variability, or HRV, which is an aspect of the heart rate changes from beat to beat that tells us about the autonomic nervous system.
Ta dekapse bana dela ro tanda ge dela ya HR to sade asuge ning dingser do ning dingser bana ko ge katsoyem bade chanyo katsoyem bade duwa dela ani stambala yende ko cheta ta je duswa ani dig jela ya HRV se do dig ko ge ta ning dangse ge jutse ko ra da jwa de dig ani diyan ko ta tang dusta dig kar thongo re stambala ya asuge ta te karso da tela ya rangu wansa mala sugo na what did you say? Autonomic,
yeah. I guess that's back to neuroscience, but the parasympathetic and the sympathetic activity. So it's well, they're interesting measures about the body. We can just say that.
Tanda the HRV says to this chipping in Banangatsuge at the once a Henry Thunder you piggy mooney and a cook is put on the Sejach or why and kitchen put in the Sejago rested.
Then the next column is temperature. It doesn't say the absolute temperature, but it tells me how much I deviate from my average temperature. And that can be useful. For example, if you get COVID or some other infection, you can see a rise in temperature, perhaps before other symptoms.
The jet like time to something as a tracer or tracete, Libu tracer carry mate, Tangam Duswa. Imana tracete, Chitanga Chanyu tracele. ani chapter ka chu chin du se chorwa de teng du swa this tambala ya de yan ko pen thop yo res ka chila bana ke teng so toy na san do chi de baina trosit pegro this tambala ya ani penu gin jwa te ko che thumbu ten leg res.
So those were the numbers I extracted, but now I'm showing you what it actually shows you when you connect with the app on the phone in your smartphone. You see a picture that looks like this. I'll walk you through the different pictures in a moment.
Anta tande ge te kar system bala ya ku ge chkhoti la teni chongwi ge tang thu te do tang thu re mu re do ta ta ti ge che la ya ne de kar system bala ya ani ko ta te te nga su khapra la tu bai ba na khapra ga la ya ani chu kanda do chu ngong ge se te ani tanda re de she ja ge ins.
So here you can see on the left, it gives me numbers for time in bed, total time of sleep, total time in bed, and my resting heart rates. Those are three things.
Tanda de shu sa yin shu de la ta ba ba na tang po te chen de ni ka chu chi kusha ne ni sa ga na ne chen de chi to ka chu chi go sha ne ti che la nga su nge su ka pse ro nge su de ka pse ning ge ding sa ka chu chi re sha sa de to de la ten sha dus.
And there are the other measures we talked about, the REM sleep time, deep sleep time, the latency to fall asleep. And here timing is whether I went to bed too late or got up too late.
That didn't man ko yung bayna nga sule shenda ka re do ko munge nyimu ge ni ka chu gosha tane ka su gore ani tupu ka chu gosha tane ni mak ko ngola yang chi nyenu ge ji la ya ani mak ku parol ngo chu te ka chu gosha sa ta timing sa de ola ya ani chi ni nye ta ya se ge chu ta ru du mu sa chi go te ta ka ni sti ku chi dus.
And at the top here, you see a chart that for different colors goes across about a week to tell me how much my sleep changed from night to night. So you can see here was a night where I didn't get as much sleep, and then the next night I got more sleep to make up for it.
Tan de ba na gang la ya nga chu ge thir chi do de ka la na ko dan tra chi ki na la ya gonda re la ni ka chu chi ra ye me ge thir de res ta de ba na ko this massage to de kap sim ba na ko ni mang po ma ro che in ba na ni ma ji ma de la yang ko ni mang po ra che chi ta ni ma ngoma de la chamo gong da ngoma de la ni ma ra jo te chamo ji ma de la ka sap chi ju ngo do chi.
My goal would be to get the same amount, to go to sleep at the same time every night and wake up at the same time every morning. I think that's the healthiest pattern. So I strive for that, but I don't always succeed.
That's true. By na chiga mugi do ka re system ba gonda nye ya te chu ta la chu chupa se nye shopa ya lang ya te ane chupa chila lang ba na te ne ka su ga ta nga chu thote ba na phan shi chi res tin do chila ya che ge ka su ga ta chi thap shi do shi ta da ta do ma sons.
In the second part of the screen, which if you scroll down, you would see it. It's a hypnogram, like I showed yesterday. So you can see being awake, then going to sleep, and some deep sleep, and then some REM sleep towards the morning. So you can see the chart minute by minute through the night across the 7.5 hours.
Tanda de ka re system ba la ya de do ani ge remba chha ani ge remba chha ge par te do wa ni se pa ta te ne ni ku pa te ne man ko ta ni ge remba ma do teng do wa a chu mung ge ni mu ni ba ta ani chi ka so deep sleep yo pa chu ra ni tu yo pa te ani chi ka so de ka sim ba na ko te de ani ko ta ni ni che lang pa ro ge te ka za teng do wa de ya chitang ka par ge ko ni chi te na ne ya chu ko ma tang bai ba na ni chu ngui te wa changui te ma tang bai na yo res ngola.
And then it also tells me my heart rate, which is averaged 58 beats per minute, but went higher and lower during the night. And it uses that information, of course, to also estimate how good my sleep is.
Ta de ka re na ni ge ding se che chanyo me na nga changa je ne ta ya ma ka chu chu du se de yo res wa ta de che ta de ge ya de pe chu tang de te wa ta da ni ge ding se te pe chu tang de ta ani ko ni ya lo khu sha se chu ro wa o te yang ko chen ja la ya ko 가서 그랬다 지포지에서 그 세제들라야 아니 구배주던 거 요레스.
And the company, in addition to providing the app, there's also a website you can go to, and then you can download all the numbers, and you can look at the data in some different ways. For example, looking at my total sleep time across many days here.
Tadanda oral said the Bila Yang to cover Gala Yenshu, but some I'm bani to Tratola Dua, Tratola Chimba by not Tratoni, Chonga Casueta, Chong like Guya Tantuti, Mambuchi dus lay or started in Banako, and Nichi Chanyo Katsuchi Rasha says Yorwa, it doesn't do start and cool get Tatuma could Palmache or this.
And this is my last slide. And it also shows from their website, you can take some data from several months and ask for any measure, what is my sleep time or my sleep latency and my bedtime? And it'll even tell you if any two things are related to each other. It pops out what we call a correlation, which is a measure of how similar two things are or how dissimilar. So I can compare how much my slow wave sleep was as a function of what time I went to bed or various things like that. So it has opportunities to get the information and work with it if you want to.
That Tatu ni Kariores and Dawa Kashich, Tandimba Dawa Kashich Kuga, Tantu de la Dusje, Tantu de Pechetan deta, and Azuga, Tantu de Pechetan deta, and Nitan de Oyo Chugua, and Nitan de Oyo Chugi Kuga, Casagureta, to Tenjam Bustoa, Tizugu Parola, and Casagureta. Dawa Karich do say, Yanko, and Yiri Parola, Dawa Karich do say, Churwata, or Timbana, Tito Parola and Dawa Karich do Tanad Kores, so I think Dawa Telayan is Chitang decision Stambalang as to 20 days search or a correlation search or Koge or Ditan de Parola to do Mundu search or what did do see Tanad Kores.
So lastly, Robin mentioned that I provided these for the program, but I wanted to say that I didn't buy them. The company is interested in giving me these to help. They want to have some research done, and they think if they give them to researchers like me, we will perhaps use them in research, and they're right. So I'm gladly accepting their donation of rings and thinking about what, even though I know it's not perfect, what research could it be useful for?
Tanda get to cost what to go de dus Kutrochia Chetango Yoresra, Tanda de and to go de new at in the mess or Tanda get Kusu Zotachi or Zotate again, Shende dus Tessons, Kusu Karichi Labina, and it's Conde dus Shende Treba in Bina, Shende Tessa Ten Hopper the Genata and a Shimji Patina Dola Trebina. And Shimji Apuchigres, Tinda Chideta Kosula, Jayoresta, and do special Tangayus. Chugin Bana who gets said the Tata Chin Samajet in the Yongor, Tina do Chireda in Bainaya, Co Yanko Pantosatira dus, Tambalaya, Tanda in Bainaya, Data Karsugeta, Shimji Kari, Chila Peche Tangadus, Tangadus, Tigalaya, Nico, Tide.
Well, I want to thank James and Ken for giving us a wonderful tour of these tools. So thank you to James and Ken. We probably could take one question if anyone has a question. You hear it.
Tanda the REM sleep tanda ni milam tang gi ni thusi jero su ta gengi suya jina geja gechus milam tang yores geja ni shus tang yo mari tinde song sra
long by nasugore
do ta di kap su ta milam geja gechus tang yores ay gi thaju che ta ngeden che jero geja gechus tang yores ay di kandes che yo nasra kansa sumbe tazu chine che yore yamena kansa thambe tazu chine 다 간사 선배 따주 제바 있는 야 다음 심바직 투제 더 배조 당제 제자고 요라 야면하다 간사 코랑 이거 보고랑 깨져 뒤지니 하는 예된 지기요래 간데스 지기요래.
Tita later last tangi gela keje chugara. His question is when you say like when you wake up somebody from REM sleep and ask did you dream, and the 80% say they dreamed, and his question is that the first person perspective of investigation or third person? So how do you know that 80% say they dreamed in the REM sleep?
Robin,
This corresponds to on the opening day we talked about how science often will take a third person investigation and Buddhism would take a first person investigation. So a third person investigation would be a researcher asking somebody if they were dreaming, and a first person investigation would be that person investigating their own dreams.
De karsanga so nima tambu tele keche yore Tsering bana kanso sumbagirwa kanso sumbagi tatsu gani tashi chi yore sta na chu bana namba bana ani kanso tampu gi ngu gani dus tashi chi yore sta tanda de malam dim bana ro tanda de kas malam tashi chi kaps ta ko tashi chi ni chi ke ta malam tang ni chi le draw trigger yor wa tin stambala ya kanso sumbagi tashi ti chag yore kanso tampu gi tashi chi yo pa na ta karsga malam tangni tigi susuga malang kola taksi chia chigorwa tim baina ni kanso tambu taksi di chagres.
I think one important point that we'll probably start to touch on a little bit more as we discuss statistics a bit is the importance of repeated measurement in science.
Ta tanda de kaps ngatsugi yangsi keche shem gres ta digi nane chi shem stambalaya zude ngatsu ta ansige tatsir pasagro ta tsijaga chigorwa ti keche shem stambalaya anchi tsenje ba de yanko jerdi yondi gungu la yong chigorwa oti tsenrikana ne kechem buchagi res.
So science doesn't typically trust any one observation. It wants to observe that situation multiple times in order to determine the extent to which it repeatedly sees that observation and in multiple settings so that it can generalize to multiple populations.
Ta tsenrik karchilana ko tashi chila tene de tan dena do chigresha sa te gi yuchi tin chig mare so istambala ya tsenrik ki ko ta tapshi mampo chirwa tashi mampo chi de de ane ko tashi mampo chigwa tashi chi te yan ko ge ne tan tan chig khori mando ane tashi te chi de ta de tola tene de ta ane chila chapi ko chig rigri ta chigwa te chigres ko tashi te yangsi chi chigwa te ga namba te ngongres tsenrik la chana.
But my final point is, as I mentioned on the first day, I think there's a rich possibility for more communication between the first person and third person investigative techniques.
Ta nima tambo de la ya shuba nang shinge ngaranga tatsi mbana ji kanso tambo da kanso simba ge tatsi gane takshe shimji che ge tablan mando yorwa de ta ga paro la ya ko teni ge paro la ya ne ji Drumo chia tang patso la ya doctor len chia ge tablen chi ya ho chu yore ti samgudus.
Well, I think we've kept you a little over, so hopefully we've gotten you excited about these tools and techniques. And if there are some of you who want to learn how to use these tools and work with us on research projects, we'd be very excited to do that with you.
Da danda chi yuche ta triko kashi shigo ngotro chi bat tene ne chetsula chi toyang chil he yo pe ge rewati chi yeswa ane ya chi mangbala chetsu na ne tanda ge tuche ta yuche tira do pe chetang de te ane ngasu ta nyamje ga ne taksep sinjing tinda do jinyi to bai na ane gasu shigo yes.
So I will wish us sweet dreams, and I hope that you all have a wonderful day, and we'll see you later in your day, and we'll see us tomorrow.
Ani ngasula ya sinjanang go shains chetsula nimu tu yong wa shos ani chetsugo gonda ta ngatsugo shopa ani ngatsu yang chenje yons.
Thank you very much.
Oh tuji cheers.
Thank you, Dawa.
Thank you so much.